Thank you for joining us on our news desk yet again. Time now for the news and the headlines. Over 200 households have been displaced by an Italian investor in Vubwi district following a court order. The 5 Ndola women who allegedly inserted an empty beer bottle into the private parts of another woman they found drinking with one of the women's husband have appeared in court. President Lungu has directed that the Zambia Correctional Service headquarters be relocated back to Kabwe. Here now is the news in detail. About 275 households in Vubwi district in Eastern Province have been left in the cold after being displaced from their ancestral land by an Italian investor. Vubwi Member of Parliament Margaret Miti disclosed this when she asked the question during the Vice President's question time to find out what government was doing to come to the aid of the affected families. Ms. Miti says the 2,000 villagers in Zozwe ward have had their houses razed down and torched by police after their land was bought by an Italian investor. She says the land in question has been the displaced villagers' ancestral land since 1910. And Vice President Inonga Wina says the time has now come for Zambians to reclaim their land from investors who are displacing them. Mrs. Wina says government does not take pleasure in seeing any of its people being displaced, especially from lands they have occupied for a long time. She says government therefore notes with regret that over 200 households have been displaced in Vubwi district by an investor. Mrs. Wina states that this is particularly that part of the land which people had occupied since 1910 was not on title of the said investor. She says government has however sent tents and has provided blankets and water for the displaced families. She was responding to a question by Vubwi Member of Parliament Margaret Miti.
Mr. Speaker, it's very important for the provincial administration in the Eastern Province as well as in other provinces to attend this situation by intervening before people are displaced. Our people have suffered at the hands of investors, as well as local or international investors, and time has come for Zambians to claim their land. And if land is grabbed from the people, it's asked the Zambian government to protect the interests of our people. Mr. Speaker, government has noted with regret the displacement of more than 250 households. Government does not take pleasure to see these people being displaced, especially from lands that they occupied for long.
Hold on the right.
At the same time, government is not happy seeing people who encroach on title land. But in this particular case, part of the land was not on title to this company.
And Mrs. Wina has assured the House that government will make the contractor who abandoned machinery for a road project in Sananga after being paid 17 million kwacha answerable. She says government wants to understand why the contractor abandoned the works and machinery after being paid. She was responding to a question by Sonanga Member of Parliament Mukumbuta Mulowa.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure whether I got the question right. But what I know is that the machinery that the honorable member of Sonanga is referring to, which is marooned in Senanga, is machinery belonging to a contractor who wanted to pull out his machine after it was paid 17 million kwacha to do the works. So this government is concerned about the people of Senanga, and they will ensure that those machines go back to work. When this contractor is found, and should be made answerable for the advance payment that was given to him, and to understand why he had to abandon the works in Senanga.
Meanwhile, Minister of Lands Chin Kapata has directed the Commission of Lands to lead a team of technocrats to Vubwi. district in Eastern Province and ensure that the issue over 200 households who have been displaced by an Italian investor is resolved amicably. Ms. Kapata says the ministry is also looking at how it can resettle the displaced families. She states that it is not government's policy to displace people who have lived on a piece of land for many years. Ms. Kapata, however, states that government respects the court's judgment and that led to the displacement of the people in Vubwi.
Have been held in certificate of title through Lasako and Kapan Limited since 1941. And these title deeds were also reviewed in 1991. As a ministry, we fully respect the court judgment that has passed. However, I want to emphasize that it's not government policy to displace people who have lived on a piece of land for many years. I have therefore directed a team comprising of the Commission of Lands and its technocrats to go on the ground and ensure that this matter is resolved amicably. Arising from the same, my ministry has embarked on how we shall settle the displaced families.
The Ndola Magistrates Court has discharged the 5 women who allegedly inserted an empty bottle of Castle beer into the private parts of a 21-year-old woman of Mushili before they were immediately rearrested. The 21-year-old woman is alleged to have been found with the husband to one of the accused in a bar in Masala Main Market on December 1st. Appearing before Principal Ndola Resident Magistrate Obesta Musukwa was Precious Kapambwe, 25, Bridget Chisha, 21, Margaret Monza, 25, Catherine Banda and Maureen Mutale, both aged 29. The 5 were charged with assault but all denied the charge. The 5 women have been in police custody since their arrest on December 9th after failing to meet bail conditions of 15,000 kwacha with 2 working sureties each. The accused appeared for commencement of trial in a packed courtroom before Senior Public Prosecutor Michael Mkololo made an application to the court to have this case discharged under Cap 188 of the Criminal Procedural Code Act because there was fresh evidence to the case. At this point, Magistrate Musukwa discharged the 5 women, but they could not leave the courtroom before they were rearrested by police and taken to Kansenshi Police Station. Facts before the court are that the victim was found drinking with Harrison Mwanza, the husband, to Kapambwe at a bar in Masala Township before they took her to Mwanza's house where an empty bottle of Castle was inserted into her private parts. This was revealed to the public through a video that went viral on social media, prompting police to investigate and arrest the 5 women. President Edgar Lungu has directed the Ministry of Home Affairs to relocate the Zambia Correctional Service headquarters back to Kabwe by 1st January 2019. Home Affairs Minister Stephen Kampiongo has told a media briefing that this is in accordance with Article 92, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Zambia. Mr. Kampiongo says President Lungu has found it necessary to relocate the headquarters of Zambia Correctional Service to ensure optimal utilization of facilities already established in Kabwe. He adds that the move will also help avoid a drain on the national treasury by building new facilities in Lusaka. Mr. Kampiongo says Kabwe has viable infrastructure for the utilization of the Correctional Service Command.
The presence of the Zambia Correctional Service headquarters in Kabwe helps to contribute to the growth of the economy, not only of Kabwe municipality, but also to the nation at large. And moreover, the Correctional Service is poised to participate in industrial and agricultural activities as per directive of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, to all the defense and security wings. The previous relocation of the headquarters of the Correctional Service to Lusaka, which has now been reversed, deprived the people of Kabwe and the province as a whole an institution critical to driving the socio-economic activities of the province. The relocation back to Kabwe of the Zambia Correctional Service headquarters, therefore, should help foster social and economic development of the town of Kabwe and indeed the whole entire province of Central Province. My government is also alive to the fact that an increase in industrial and agricultural production levels in the Zambia Correctional Service shall have a direct effect on the welfare of the people of Kawe and should impact favorably on the economic status of the service and the country as a whole. It is the desire of my government, therefore, that the Zambia Correctional Service is repositioned for successful involvement in industrial and agricultural production and thereby contribute to the government's economic diversification program. The Minister of Home Affairs, the command and staff of the Zambia Correctional Service welcome the relocation of the Zambia Correctional Service headquarters back to Kawe.
The Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, JCTR, has observed that the ruling Patriotic Front is not living up to its promises to reduce the cost of living for the poor majority by increasing agricultural productivity, enhanced job creation, and accelerated diversification of the economy. JCTR Social and Economic Development Program Officer Paul Chileshe says this is because the cost of living has remained high and is increasingly getting out of reach for low-wage workers. Mr. Chileshe says the November 2018 JCTR Basic Basket BNB for a family of 5 living in Lusaka stood at 5,324 kwacha 14 ngwe, which was 7 kwacha more than the October BNB, which stood at 5,317 kwacha 95 ngwe. He says the most significant changes were noted in tea bags, which increased by 5 kwacha from 79 kwacha 15 ngwe in October to 84 kwacha 14 ngwe in November per kg. Mr. Chileshe says beef increased by 2 kwacha from 34 kwacha in October to 36 kwacha in November per kg, with sugar increasing by 1 kwacha from 25 kwacha 42 ngwe to 26 kwacha 36 ngwe per 2 kg, while tomatoes increased by 88 ngwe from 6 kwacha 79 in November. He notes that the gap between the cost of living and wages is mostly affecting the poor and the vulnerable in society who are struggling to avoid the basic needs of life. Mr. Chileshe says it is therefore important that wages and salaries in both the private and public sectors respond to the ever-increasing cost of living.
The JCTR BNB survey, we found out that the gap between the cost of living and income continues to widen each and every month. This actually is very worrying because it's depriving the poor from living a dignified life. And as a faith-based institution, we believe that all human beings are supposed to live a dignified life. And if the gap between cost of living and incomes continues to widen, it will mean that people will not live that dignified life. So as JCTR, we are urging government to ensure that they create decent job opportunities, jobs that will be able to give people enough incomes, or incomes that will be reflective of the cost of living. We also urge government to accelerate economic diversification, especially in the agriculture sector, which is labor intensive, which can create more jobs for the most vulnerable if fully implemented. The JCTR
Minister of Energy Matthew Nkua says the country will not experience any load shedding in 2019, regardless of whether it experiences dry spells or not. Mr. Nkua says the country will only get a situation where it begins to rationalize electricity in an event of a serious drought. Mr. Nkua has told QTV News that the Kariba Dam is almost full and that it only requires a little amount of rain to get to the full capacity. He says in addition to hydro-generated electricity, Zambia will still have 300 megawatts of power coming from the Mamba coal plant and another 150 megawatts from a solar system. He adds that the solar plants being put up will also be ready by February 2019, adding that this will then enable the country to shut some of the turbines at Kariba Dam with a view of reserving the water. Mr. Nkua states that this means that the country will be cushioned by the 150 megawatt solar power during the day and in the evening use the 300 megawatts produced by Mamba thermal plant.
We have got the solar systems that will come in place, maybe about 150 megawatts that will come in place by January, February. So that shows that it's okay. What happens in this case is if we get that solar power working, it means that we can shut off some turbines at Kariba and the hydropower station. Maybe shut off 2 or 3 turbines so we can reserve the water. And then only in the night when we can start using the water. But as for now, the dam is it's quite full. We've got a lot of water in the dam, and it didn't go very low this year. So we've got a lot of water. We expect that with a bit of rain, we'll be able to fill it up, because we're almost getting to full capacity last rainy season. So in view of that, we hope that things will be okay.
The Luanshya Magistrate Court has adjourned to January 14, 2019, the case in which National Democratic Congress NDC leader Chishimba Kambwili and 11 others are charged with unlawful assembly. This is in a matter in which one member of parliament is jointly charged with 11 AVIC international workers, and the 12 appeared in court for mention. Luanshya resident Magistrate Kalutwe Chiluba, who was sitting in for Principal Resident Magistrate Obster Musukwa of Ndola, adjourned the matter to 14th January 2019 for mention. Magistrate Chiluba, who extended bail for the accused persons, further said 11th February 2019 as the date for commencement of trial. Earlier, the Magistrate Court granted the accused persons a 30,000 kwacha bail in their own recognizance, respectively. Mr. Kambwili was arrested for unlawful assembly on 30th November 2018, a few days after a group of angry protesting workers from AVIC International in Luanshya went to his residence to express their grievances on alleged appalling working conditions. Meanwhile, chaos almost erupted outside the Luanshya Magistrate Court when Mr. Kambwili tried to address his 11 co-accused persons, their families and his sympathizers after appearing in court. However, police stopped Mr. Kambwili from addressing the crowd, a move that incensed him. He complained that his rights were being infringed upon as a human being. He dared police to arrest him again for the same charge, as he was going to address his co-accused at his residence. Housing and Infrastructure Development Minister Ronald Chitotela says his ministry will craft key performance indicators for directors as a measure to improve on performance in the ministry. Mr. Chitotela says the performance contracts will set as a benchmark for the directors and enable them contribute what they are employed for, as well as making it easy for the ministry to achieve its mandate. He has expressed regret that some directors are in the habit of going for work just to occupy space, as well as play games in their offices at the expense of delivering quality service to the people. Speaking at the launch of the 2018 to 2021 strategic plan for his ministry, Mr. Chitotela says the strategic plan will provide the ministry with a powerful instrument for the achievement of its goals. He explains that the plan is fully aligned to the priorities in the 7th National Development Plan and therefore forms a firm basis for the ministry's contribution to the achievement of the development outcomes outlined in the national plan. Mr. Chitotela has since directed all his staff and statutory bodies under his ministry to ensure that the plan is implemented to the latter.
And above all, we must be people and human-centered. Whatever we do in our offices, we must put Zambia first. And we must remember that we've been entrusted by millions of Zambians who are not privileged to be where we are. Therefore, as I conclude, let me emphasize that we need to conduct our business above board. As I conclude, I want to state that the ministry places great importance on collaboration with all stakeholders in its quest to realize the goals and achievements of strategic planning. And as a ministry, we will continue to engage and solicit the full participation and support of all the stakeholders. I therefore wish to appeal to all the public and private stakeholders to support the implementation of this plan and to its logical conclusion, and so that it can give us the desired results that will benefit Zambians. We need to continue emphasizing and practicing the concepts of leaving no one behind, in line with the desires of His Excellency Mr. Edgar Chagwalungu, President of the Republic of Zambia. May I take this opportunity that, including the scorecard, DPS Kangwa, I want to assure you, the Deputy Secretary to Cabinet, I want to assure you that those scorecards will not just be books. And I was thinking, as you were speaking, that yes, we have the contract performance with the Permanent Secretary. I think we need to get down to at the level of directors. Because I can't be in the ministry where we have people who just come to occupy space.
Speaking at the same event, Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet, Patrick Kangwa, has urged the Ministry of Housing and Infrastructure Development to ensure there is a strong link between individual annual planning and budgeting to the strategic plan and scoreboard. Mr. Kangwa says this is the only way of maximizing the ministry's contribution to the implementation of the 7th National Development Plan.
Therefore, effective strategic planning articulates not only where an organization is going and the actions needed to achieve intended results, but also measures to signal success. Honorable Minister, it is our conviction as Cabinet Office that the journey the Ministry has embarked on through the launch of the strategic plan is an important one. For this reason, all efforts must be made to facilitate implementation of the plan. As Cabinet Office, we shall continue providing the necessary guidance and support to the Ministry and ensure that the Permanent Secretary is held accountable for its delivery. Honourable Minister, I also wish to urge the Ministry to ensure that there is a strong link between the ministerial and individual annual planning and budgeting to the strategic plan and scorecard. This is the only sure way of maximizing the Ministry's contribution to the implementation of the 7th National Development Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, as earlier stated, Cabinet will continue providing oversight on performance management by the ministries, provinces, and other spending agencies to ensure that government's development agenda is effectively implemented. Therefore,
Civil society Scaling Up Nutrition Alliance has expressed fear that malnutrition will worsen in the country due to the failure by most people to access quality foods in various parts of the country. CSO Sun Country Director Matthew Muhuru says reports of people in some parts of Eastern Province surviving on mangoes due to hunger is not only shameful, but will impact negatively on the fight against malnutrition in the country. Mr. Muhuru notes that with the 70% recurrence of the El Nino weather conditions for the 2018-2019 seasonal forecast by the World Meteorological Organization, malnutrition cases are likely to increase in Zambia as food production is likely to be affected at both household and national levels. Mr. Muhuru has since appealed to government to the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit to quickly intervene and deliver food to Lumezi, Mambwe, Gwembe and Nyumba, among other areas that have been hit by hunger due to poor harvests recorded during the 2017-2018 farming season. He has stated that malnutrition remains a serious problem for Zambia and failure to act now will result in continued loss of lives, especially among children. Mr. Muhuru has added it is shameful that people can be surviving on mangoes in a country that has over the years recorded good yields in maize, sorghum, rice, millet and cassava, among other crops. President Edgar Lungu has been challenged to apologize for his recent utterance in which he allegedly said that in every 10 thieves caught, at least 6 would be Bembas. Chipili Independent Member of Parliament Joyce Chabi is demanding that President Lungu apologizes because such utterances are demeaning to the Bemba-speaking people. Mr. Chabi says as Bemba, he personally feels offended by the President Lungu's remarks. He tells QTV News that if the President does not apologize for his demeaning words against the Bembas, ruling Patriotic Front will suffer consequences. Mr. Chabi, who could not get a satisfactory answer from Vice President Inonga Wina during the Vice President's question time, says President Lungu should know that he cannot expect the people he is calling thieves to vote for him.
The only thing that I would urge him to do, with due respect, is just to come out and apologize. Or even his spokesperson can do that for him, because I can tell you, this will have a very serious impact on the PF when it comes to the elections, because you don't expect the people you are calling to be thieves to be voting for you. How do you go to appeal to the thieves to vote for you? In 2021. So it will have a very serious impact on the elections that are coming in 2021, unless otherwise the president apologizes to the members. It's not something we are not going to take lightly, and I'm sure everybody, every member wherever they are, they understand and know and comprehend that no, this word is extremely demeaning. There are so many examples that the president could have used to justify the fact that Bembas are the majority, rather than just going for a negative example, which is extremely demeaning, like I have said. And you can see I'm even speaking with emotions, because the moment I saw that, I was disturbed. It has destroyed my day.
The inaugural Turkish Airlines direct flight from Europe has landed at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport in Lusaka. The flight number TK609 landed at KK International Airport shortly before 10 hours. The airline will be servicing the Lusaka route with direct flights into Europe twice a week. And government says the commencement of Turkish Airlines flights into Lusaka creates the much-needed direct link to Europe. Speaking after the Turkish Airlines plane made the inaugural flight to Lusaka from Istanbul, Transport and Communications Minister Brian Mushimba, in a speech read on his behalf by Permanent Secretary Mishek Lungu, says the flights will also result in new routes, shorter travel times and lower fares, and ultimately lead to air traffic growth in Zambia. More in this report.
The Turkish airline has officially been launched in Zambia. The flight touched down at the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport this morning just before 10 hours. This becomes the first airline from Europe to directly service the Zambian market. Ministry of Transport and Communication Permanent Secretary Engineer Mishek Lungu and Turkey's ambassador to Zambia, Sebnem Nsesu, led the delegation that received the airline. Minister of Transport and Communication Brian Mushimba, in a speech read on his behalf by the Permanent Secretary Engineer Mishek Lungu, says the direct route from Istanbul will put Zambia in a good position towards the country's vision of becoming a hub in the Southern African sub-region.
You might be aware that this would not have happened without the high-level diplomatic interactions between our presidents that happened on 28 July 2018, as earlier mentioned by Our Excellency, between His Excellency the President of Turkey, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and the President of Zambia, Mr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. We are implementing the instructions of our leaders. Can we clap for ourselves for being good implementers of instructions? That's how it should be.
Turkey's ambassador to Zambia, Sebnem Nsesu, says Turkish Airlines fly to more countries than any other airline in the world, with 304 destinations in 122 countries on 5 continents, with Lusaka becoming the 55th in Africa.
During the first presidential visit from Turkey to Zambia on 28th of July this year, His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the President of the Republic of Turkey, announced that Turkish Airlines would start direct flights in December from Istanbul to Zambia. So we are thankful to our President for his personal interest on this matter, and to the Executive Board of Turkish Airlines for this landmark decision. I would also like to thank His Excellency Edgar Chagwa Lungu, the President of the Republic of Zambia, to the members of the government and the relevant authorities for their strong support throughout the preparation process.
And Turkish Airlines Senior Vice President for Sales, Kerem Sap, says as one of the fastest growing airlines in the world, the Turkish Airlines is always looking for new and innovative ways to bring more value to its passengers.
Since we were established 85 years ago, we have grown from strength to strength, and today we are proud to operate a young, modern and state-of-the-art fleet of 330 aircraft. Our heritage in Africa continues to its journey today to serve our 55 destinations and 306 countries in colorful continent, where Turkish Airlines will offer to fly per week, Tuesday and Friday, between Istanbul and Lusaka. With this new collaboration between our two cities, opportunities for Zambia and Turkey will continue to grow.
The Turkish airline will fly into Lusaka twice in a week. This is a major development that will benefit the country in various sectors. Martha Katambi, reporting for QTV News in Lusaka.
Government has channeled part of the money it allocated towards the construction of a new runway at the Kasama International Airport to the construction of a new control tower. Kasama Central Member of Parliament Kelvin Sampa says the runway, which was supposed to be a 3.6 kilometers long or stretch, has now been reduced to 2.8 kilometers. Mr. Sampa says government's decision follows the realization that the airport did not need such a long runway to be called an international airport. He says in view of this decision, the construction of the new control tower at the airport will also commence. Conservation South Luangwa in Mfuwe says it has spent $230,000 on building 2 school halls at the Mfuwe Day Secondary School. Andy Hogg, director of Mfuwe, says this is part of the contractor's corporate social responsibility, as the school halls will be for various purposes, including exams, hiring for events, thereby raise money for the school. Speaking after touring the projects, Mr. Hogg says the association has also introduced a feeding program to help address the daily needs for some pupils, and Department of National Parks and Wildlife Director Paul Ziambo has commended the organization in supporting government's development programs. Mr. Ziambo says the initiative is an example of the potential tourism has in development. And Tourism Director Ruben Zulu says Conservation South Luangwa's contribution proves the potential tourism has in the government's diversification agenda.
The reason we're using containers to help us build some of these halls is that the actual container could be used for storage, it could be used for a teacher's office, it could be used for a little meeting area. So it's secure areas within the building that can be used by the teachers or the children to help.
At the moment, I cannot comment on others what they are doing. They may be doing 1 or 2 things and so on, but which people may not be aware of. But I think because we are here, I would like to talk about Mfuwe. Yeah. So I think what is important here, the underlying thing here is that we have a resource. It's a resource which is wildlife, and wildlife is the base for tourism in this area. Therefore, it is important for us to protect and conserve wildlife so that it can improve and enhance tourism activities in the area, and then tourism activities will now improve the livelihoods of people. It is, as we have seen, how tour operators have come together to help out and provide infrastructure for.
That tourism news concludes our news at this hour. Thank you so much for being with us. But before I take a run, here is a recap of stories in the headlines. Over 200 households have been displaced by Italian investors in Vubwi district following a court order. The 5 Indola women who allegedly inserted an empty bottle into the private parts of another woman they were found drinking with one of the women's husband have appeared in court. President Edgar Lungu has directed that the Zambia Correctional Service headquarters be relocated back to Kabwe. And that's it for the news. Until next time, bye-bye. God bless.